The council chamber stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of alien beings sat in their designated seats, representing their worlds and empires. The air buzzed with translated voices speaking in hundreds of languages. At the very back, in the cheapest seats, sat Ambassador Jiwan of Earth. She had been coming to these meetings for 10 years now. 10 years of listening to other species talk down to humanity. 10 years of watching Earth get pushed around. 10 years of biting her tongue while aliens treated her people like dirt. Today was different, though. Today felt wrong. The Velcrin Empire had called for a special vote. Their emperor, a massive reptilian creature named Thaxus, wanted to discuss what he called the human problem. Jiwan felt her stomach turn when she heard those words. The Velcrin representative stood tall at the speaker's platform. His scales gleamed under the lights as he addressed the council. "Humans are weak," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "They contribute nothing to our galaxy. They take up space and resources that stronger species could use better." Jiwan wanted to stand up and scream, but she stayed seated. She had learned that interrupting only made things worse. "I propose a solution," the Velcrin continued. "We relocate all humans to work colonies. They can serve the greater good of the galaxy by doing manual labor. It's more than they deserve, really." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species seemed shocked. Most seemed to be considering it. Jiwan felt cold all over. The vote was called. She watched the board light up with votes. Green for yes, red for no. Blue for abstaining. Green lights flooded the board. 847 species voted yes. Only 3 voted no. 12 abstained from voting at all. Humanity had just been sentenced to slavery by democratic vote. Jiwan stood up slowly. Every alien eye in the chamber turned to look at her. She walked down the long aisle toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. At the door, she turned back. "You will regret this decision," she said quietly. Then she left. Back on Earth, Admiral Heejin received the news in her office. She sat at her desk, fingers pressed together, thinking. She had expected this day would come eventually. The galaxy had never respected humanity. They saw Earth as a young species, primitive and weak. They had no idea how wrong they were. Heejin pressed a button on her desk. "Activate Protocol Prometheus," she said calmly. Across Earth's solar system, hidden facilities came to life. In the asteroid belt, massive doors opened in rocks that looked natural but weren't. On Mars, underground bunkers began powering up their weapons. Around Jupiter's moons, ships that had been disguised as mining vessels powered up their true systems. For 150 years, humanity had been part of the galactic community. For 150 years, Earth had seemed weak and submissive, but that had been a lie, a carefully maintained deception. While other species thought humans were busy just trying to survive in space, Earth's best scientists had been working in secret. They studied every alien technology they could get their hands on. They found the weaknesses in every species' biology. They built weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge of his ship, the Indomitable. He had been waiting for this moment, though he had hoped it would never come. The message from Earth Command was clear. The Velcrin Empire was sending 50,000 warships to enforce the Council's decision. 50,000 warships against Earth's 2,000. The galaxy expected an easy victory. They expected humanity to surrender or run. Daehyun smiled grimly. The galaxy was about to learn a very painful lesson. "All ships assume positions," he commanded. "Activate quantum displacement drives." Around him, his crew moved efficiently. They had trained for this scenario hundreds of times. Every person knew their role perfectly. The quantum displacement drive was humanity's greatest secret. While other species used traditional faster-than-light travel, humans had discovered something better. They could fold space around their ships, making them invisible and untraceable. A ship using quantum displacement didn't move through space. It existed in multiple places at once until the pilot chose which location to collapse into. The Velcrin fleet would never see them coming. Far away, in a hidden research station, Dr. Minho monitored his creations. Thousands of weapons he had designed over decades were now being deployed. Singularity cannons that could create tiny black holes. Biological weapons tailored to attack specific alien DNA. Drone swarms controlled by advanced artificial intelligence. He felt no joy in this moment. Minho was a scientist, not a soldier. He had hoped these weapons would only ever be deterrents, never actually used. But the galaxy had forced humanity's hand. His assistant, a young woman named Soman, looked at the display screens nervously. "Doctor, are you sure about this? Once we use these weapons, there's no going back." Minho nodded slowly. They voted to enslave every human being. Every child. Every family. They made their choice. Now we make ours. The Velcrin fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system 3 days later. Emperor Thaxus himself commanded the armada from his flagship. He was confident this would be quick. Humans had no chance against Velcrin military might. His sensors showed nothing. No defending fleet. No orbital platforms. Earth seemed completely undefended. "The cowards have run away," Thaxus laughed. "Move the fleet forward. We'll claim their planet as a trophy." His 50,000 ships advanced in perfect formation, moving toward the blue planet that hung in space like a jewel. They never saw the trap. One moment, space was empty. The next moment, human ships materialized everywhere, not in front of the Velcrin fleet, but scattered throughout it. Above, below, inside their formation, 2,000 human vessels appearing from nowhere. Catching the Velcrin completely off guard, Daehyun gave the order. Fire. What happened next would be talked about in every corner of the galaxy for generations. Human weapons tore through Velcrin ships like paper. The aliens' famous particle shields, which had made them nearly invincible for thousands of years, meant nothing against weapons that warped space itself. Singularity cannons fired. Velcrin warships didn't just explode. They collapsed inward, crushed by impossible gravity before vanishing completely. Drone swarms poured out of human vessels. Billions of tiny fighters that moved with perfect coordination, targeting engines, life support, and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Velcrin tried to fight back, but they couldn't hit what they couldn't track. Human ships flickered in and out of normal space, appearing just long enough to fire before vanishing again. Emperor Thaxus watched in horror from his flagship as his mighty armada was destroyed around him. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds were being torn apart. Warriors who had never known defeat were dying in droves. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Of 50,000 Velcrin warships, only 12 escaped. Daehyun let them go on purpose. Terrified survivors would spread the word better than any message Earth could send. Admiral Hyjin appeared on every screen in the galaxy. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard as steel. "For 150 years we have been patient. We have been quiet. You believed us weak. That was your mistake. The Velcrin Empire declared war on humanity. We have responded. Any species that approaches our space will be considered hostile. We do not seek war, but we will not accept subjugation. Choose wisely." The message ended. Across the galaxy, species that had voted to enslave humanity suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake. Earth had been quiet for so long. Now the galaxy understood why. Humanity hadn't been weak. They had been preparing, and now they were done being patient. The 12 Velcrin ships that escaped arrived back at their homeworld in terrible condition. Hulls were melted and torn. Crew members were traumatized and broken. When they told their story, many in the Velcrin Empire refused to believe it. 50,000 ships destroyed in 17 minutes? Impossible. The humans must have used some kind of trick. Emperor Thaxus did not make that mistake. He had seen the battle recordings. He had watched human weapons do things that shouldn't be possible. His hands shook with rage as he sat on his throne. "Mobilize everything," he commanded. "Every ship. Every soldier. Every weapon we have. I want 500,000 warships ready within the month. We will crush these humans and make an example of them that the galaxy will never forget." His advisors tried to suggest caution, but Thaxus would not listen. The Velcrin Empire had never been humiliated like this. They would restore their honor with overwhelming force. But Admiral Hyjin had no intention of waiting for the Velcrin to regroup. She stood in Earth's command center, looking at holographic displays showing the entire galaxy. Her officers waited for her orders. Captain Daehyun was there too, his ship having returned to Earth for resupply. "We're not going to defend," Hyjin said quietly. "We're going to attack. Operation Nightfall begins now." Daehyun felt a chill run down his spine. He knew what Operation Nightfall meant. Humanity was going to take the war directly to the Velcrin Empire. 500 human ships departed Earth in small groups. They spread out across the galaxy, each with specific targets. They weren't going to fight the Velkrin military. They were going to destroy everything the Velkrin needed to make war. The attacks began 3 days later. Velkrin shipyard orbiting their industrial world suddenly found human vessels appearing inside their defensive perimeter. Before the station could even sound alarms, singularity cannons turned the entire facility into scrap metal. By the time Velkrin defense forces arrived, the human ships were gone. 2 hours later, another attack. This time a military academy where young Velkrin warriors trained. Human drones swarmed through the facility, destroying equipment and forcing evacuation. No students were killed, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Then a research station. Then a supply depot. Then a fuel processing plant. Human ships appeared, struck hard, and vanished before anyone could respond. The Velkrin military scrambled to defend their territory, but they were always too late. They couldn't track the human ships. They couldn't predict where the next attack would come. Fear began to spread through the Velkrin Empire. Citizens who had cheered for war now locked their doors at night, wondering if their city would be next. Lieutenant Somin sat at her station aboard the Indomitable, analyzing Velkrin communication channels that Dr. Minho's team had hacked months ago. She was young, only 25 years old, but brilliant at pattern recognition. She noticed something. "Captain Daehyun, I'm seeing unusual troop movements. Large forces converging on a single point." Daehyun came to look at her screen. "What point?" Somin pulled up a star chart. "Here. It's the Velkrin Military Command Nexus, a massive space station orbiting their capital world. All their fleet coordination happens there." Daehyun studied the data. The Nexus was supposed to be impregnable. Thousands of defensive weapons, shields that could withstand a supernova, a garrison of 50,000 soldiers. "If we take out that station," Somin said quietly, "the Velkrin lose their ability to coordinate their fleets. They'd be blind." Daehyun made his decision quickly. "Send the plan to Admiral Heejin. Tell her I'm requesting permission to strike the Nexus." The response came back within an hour. "Permission granted. Do not fail." 50 human ships gathered at a rendezvous point outside Velkrin space. Daehyun addressed all the captains on a secure channel. "This will be the most dangerous mission we've attempted. The Nexus is heavily defended. We'll have one chance to get this right." He laid out the plan. They would approach from multiple vectors simultaneously, using quantum displacement to appear inside the station's defensive range. Dr. Minho had provided a virus that would turn the station's automated defenses against the Velkrin's own ships. Boarding teams would secure key areas while the virus spread. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was exactly what humanity did best. The attack began at midnight Velkrin time. 50 human ships materialized around the massive station in perfect synchronization. The station's sensors screamed warnings, but before gunners could react, the virus activated. Defensive turrets swiveled away from human ships and began firing on Velkrin vessels instead. Missiles launched toward Velkrin frigates. The carefully maintained defensive perimeter collapsed into chaos. Major Kyung-ho led the boarding parties. He was a veteran ground fighter, tough and smart. His team of 200 soldiers wore advanced combat suits that made them faster and stronger than any Velkrin warrior. They breached the station's hull in 12 different places simultaneously. Inside, Velkrin soldiers tried to mount a defense, but they were completely unprepared. Human soldiers moved through corridors with practiced efficiency. Their weapons were designed specifically to counter Velkrin biology, sonic disruptors that overloaded Velkrin nervous systems, causing paralysis without killing. Kyung-ho reached the command center first. He planted charges on the door and blew it open. Inside, Velkrin officers scrambled for weapons. "Surrender," Kyung-ho said in their language. "This facility is now under human control." They didn't surrender. They chose to fight. It was over in seconds. Within 4 hours, the Nexus was secure. Velkrin forces were either captured or fleeing. Daehyun walked onto the station's main command deck and looked at the holographic displays showing the entire Velkrin military network. He opened a direct channel to Emperor Thaxis. The Emperor's face appeared on screen, twisted with rage. "Your military is broken," Daehyun said calmly. "Surrender now and your species will survive. Continue this war, and we will make sure the Velkrin Empire becomes a memory that no one bothers to remember." Thaxis screamed something incoherent and cut the connection. 2 days later, the Velkrin Empire did something unthinkable. They deployed a weapon that had been banned by the Galactic Council for 10,000 years. The World Breaker. It was a ship 30 kilometers long, powered by a captured neutron star. Its main weapon was a gravitational implosion cannon that could literally shatter a planet's core. The Velcrin had kept it hidden for millennia, waiting for a moment desperate enough to use it. That moment had come. Emperor Thaxus ordered the Worldbreaker to travel to Earth and destroy humanity's home planet completely. When news of the Worldbreaker's deployment reached the Galactic Council, panic erupted. Using planet-killing weapons was the galaxy's most sacred taboo. Species that had supported the Velcrin suddenly began distancing themselves. Others condemned the deployment, but did nothing to stop it. Ambassador Jiwon returned to the council chamber for the first time since walking out. The chamber fell silent as she approached the speaker's platform. "You allowed this," she said, her voice echoing through the massive space. "You voted to enslave us. You created this situation. Now you watch as your laws mean nothing. When we finish with the Velcrin, we will remember every species that stood with them. We will remember every species that stayed silent." She left again, her words hanging in the air like a death sentence. The Worldbreaker and its escort fleet of 100,000 warships set course for Earth. The journey would take 3 weeks. Admiral Hijin gathered her top advisors. Dr. Minho presented a single option, one so extreme that even he hesitated to suggest it. "We can use the silence protocol," he said quietly. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. The silence protocol was the most classified project humanity had ever undertaken. It was a weapon that could collapse the luminal network, the quantum field that made faster-than-light travel possible. Any ship caught in a silence protocol zone would be trapped, unable to travel faster than light ever again. But the weapon had a massive area of effect. Using it would cut off entire regions of the galaxy from FTL travel. Hyejin looked around the room. "They're bringing a planet killer to our doorstep. We respond with everything we have. Prepare the silence protocol. We end this war in a way that ensures no species ever threatens humanity again." The debate in Earth's command center lasted for hours. Using the silence protocol would change the galaxy forever. Trillions of beings would lose access to faster-than-light travel. Trade routes would collapse. Civilizations would be cut off from each other, but the alternative was letting the Velcrin destroy Earth. Dr. Minho stood before the holographic display, explaining how the weapon worked. "Every species in the galaxy uses the same quantum field for FTL travel. We call it the luminal network. It exists everywhere like an invisible web connecting all of space." He manipulated the display, showing waves of energy. The silence protocol creates a cascade failure in the luminal network. Once triggered, the field collapses in a specific region. Ships in that area lose FTL capability immediately. They can't escape. They can't call for help. They're trapped. "How large is the affected area?" Admiral Hyejin asked. 3 light-years in radius from the activation point, Minho replied. "Everything in that sphere goes dark, and there's no way to restore it. The collapse is permanent." Silence filled the room. Permanent. That word carried terrible weight. Captain Daehyun spoke up. "They brought a planet killer to our home. They voted to enslave every human being. They started this war. We need to finish it." Hyejin made her decision. "Prepare the silence protocol. We'll deploy it when the Worldbreaker enters the Kuiper Belt. Make sure every human ship knows the plan. No one gets caught in the collapse zone." 3 weeks later, the Velcrin fleet approached Earth's solar system. The Worldbreaker led the way, surrounded by 100,000 escort ships. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Emperor Thaxus stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought, watching Earth grow larger on his screens. He would fire the implosion cannon himself. He would watch humanity's home planet shatter into dust. "Prepare the main weapon," he commanded. "Target the 3rd planet." His crew worked at their stations, charging the terrible cannon that had destroyed civilizations before humans ever learned to make fire. Then the trap sprung. Human ships materialized all around the Velcrin fleet, but this time they didn't attack. They simply formed a perfect sphere, surrounding the enemy completely. Every human vessel maintained exactly the same distance from each other, creating a geometric pattern in space. Thaxus stared at the display in confusion. "What are they doing?" "All ships, open fire!" The Velcrin fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy weapons lit up space like a new sun. Missiles streaked toward human ships. But the human vessels just dodged, weaving through the attacks while maintaining their positions. They weren't fighting back. They were stalling. On Earth, Dr. Minho watched the clock count down. His hands hovered over the activation controls. Around the solar system, hidden devices built over decades waited for his signal. These devices had been disguised as asteroids, debris, even part of the Kuiper Belt itself. 30 seconds, his assistant announced. Minho felt sick. He was about to trap 100,000 ships and their crews in permanent isolation. Millions would die slowly as their supplies ran out and they drifted through space for eternity. 10 seconds. But they had brought a planet killer. They had voted for slavery. They had forced this choice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Minho pressed the button. The effect was invisible at first. Then reality seemed to ripple like a stone dropped in a pond. The ripple expanded from multiple points around the Velcrin fleet, spreading at the speed of light. When the ripples met and merged, the luminal network collapsed. Every Velcrin ship suddenly lost all power to their FTL drives. Warning alarms screamed on 10,000 bridges simultaneously. Engineers stared at readings that made no sense. The quantum field that had existed for billions of years was simply gone. Emperor Thaxus grabbed his communication officer. "What's happening? Why have our drives failed?" The officer's face was pale with terror. "My lord, the luminal network has collapsed. We have no FTL capability. We're trapped." Thaxus looked at the tactical display. His fleet was scattered across 3 light-years of space. Without FTL, gathering them together would take years. Getting back to Velcrin space at sublight speed would take... The number appeared on his screen. 80,000 years. His legs gave out. He collapsed into his command chair, staring at the impossible number. 80,000 years. Everyone on every ship in his fleet would die of old age. Their children would die. Their grandchildren would die. Generations would be born and die in these metal tombs before they even got close to home. Captain Daehyun's voice came through on every Velcrin communication channel. "Emperor Thaxus, you brought death to our doorstep. Now you will drift in silence until your ships become graves. This is mercy. We're letting you live. When your distant descendants finally reach home in 80,000 years, tell them what happens when humanity is threatened." The human ships vanished, leaving the Velcrin fleet alone in the darkness. News of what happened spread across the galaxy within hours. The Silence Protocol's existence became known to every species. The implications were immediately clear to anyone with basic understanding of physics. Humanity could cut off entire regions of space from galactic civilization at will. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Ambassador Jiwon was invited to speak. She stood at the center of the chamber looking at the thousands of alien representatives. "Let me be clear," she said. "We will deploy the Silence Protocol against any species that threatens us. We will collapse the luminal network around your worlds, your fleets, and your people. You will be alone in the dark, cut off from the galaxy forever. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some species demanded that humanity be destroyed before they could use the weapon again. Others argued that humanity had every right to defend itself. Still others sat in stunned silence, realizing that the balance of galactic power had shifted forever. The Ashari Collective, a powerful insectoid hive mind empire, refused to accept humanity's ultimatum. Their representative stood and spoke in the unified voice of billions. "We do not recognize human authority. We do not accept human threats. The Ashari Collective will not bow to a primitive species. Then you will learn the same lesson as the Velcrin," Jiwon replied calmly. "Choose your next actions carefully." The Ashari began mobilizing their forces. Unlike the Velcrin, who relied on traditional warships, the Ashari controlled billions of drones across thousands of worlds. They were a hive mind, all thinking as one. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming numbers and perfect coordination. They believed that even with humanity's advanced weapons, sheer numbers would win. They were wrong, but they would discover that the hard way. Other species saw opportunity in the chaos. The Drenith Republic, which had been oppressed by the Ashari for centuries, launched a rebellion. The Corvani clans declared independence. Dozens of smaller species that had been vassals to larger empires suddenly saw a chance for freedom. The galaxy descended into the largest war it had seen in 10,000 years, and at the center of it all was humanity, the species everyone had underestimated. Admiral Heejin watched reports coming in from across the galaxy. The Silence Protocol had worked perfectly. But it had also opened a Pandora's box. The old order was collapsing. New alliances were forming. Species were choosing sides. We wanted to be left alone, she said to Captain Daehyun, who had come to Earth for briefing. Now we're at the center of a galactic civil war. Daehyun nodded grimly. We showed them we have teeth. Now we have to show them we know how to use them carefully. The Ashari will attack soon. When they do, we need to be ready. He was right. The Ashari Collective launched their assault 2 weeks later, and this time humanity would face an enemy unlike anything they had fought before. The Ashari Collective attacked without warning. Their strategy was brutal and designed to force humanity into an impossible choice. 12 human colony worlds came under assault simultaneously. Unlike the Velkrin, who used large warships, the Ashari deployed drone swarms. Millions upon millions of small fighters, all controlled by a single hive-mind intelligence. They moved like schools of fish, flowing around obstacles and overwhelming defenses through pure numbers. On the colony world of New Jeju, alarms blared as the Ashari swarm entered orbit. Governor Nari watched the sensors with growing horror. The number of incoming hostiles kept climbing. 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. The counter couldn't keep up. Evacuate all civilians to the underground shelters, she ordered. Send a distress signal to Earth, we need help now. Captain Daehyun received the distress calls from all 12 colonies. His face hardened as he read the reports. The Ashari weren't just attacking military targets. They were deliberately targeting civilians, trying to force Earth to use the silence protocol or watch millions die. Admiral Heejin faced the same impossible choice she had feared. If we use the silence protocol, we save the colonies but trap the Ashari fleets and doom surrounding sectors. If we don't use it, millions of humans will die. Give me time, Daehyun said. Let me take a fleet to defend the colonies conventionally. We can hold them off long enough to evacuate civilians. Heejin knew it was a suicide mission. 300 human ships against millions of Ashari drones. But she also knew that using the silence protocol again would turn the entire galaxy against humanity. They would be seen as monsters who destroyed faster than light travel whenever it suited them. You have 1 week, she said. Make it count. Daehyun gathered his fleet. The Indomitable led 300 human vessels toward New Jeju. Lieutenant Somin stood at her station, watching the tactical display nervously. She had never seen enemy numbers like this before. Prin, the Ashari outnumber us 10,000 to 1, she said quietly. Then we'll just have to be 10,000 times better. Daehyun replied with a grim smile. The human fleet arrived at New Jeju to find the colony under heavy bombardment. Ashari drones swarmed around the planet like angry insects. Human ships pushed into the swarm, weapons firing continuously. The battle was chaos. Ashari drones died by the thousands, but thousands more took their place. Human ships focused on protecting evacuation transports that were lifting civilians from the surface. Major Kyung-ho led ground forces defending the spaceports. His soldiers held defensive positions while terrified colonists boarded ships. Ashari drones tried to break through their lines repeatedly. Hold the line, Kyung-ho shouted, firing his weapon at the approaching swarm. Every minute we hold is another 100 civilians who escape. On the Indomitable's bridge, Lieutenant Somin studied the Ashari attack patterns. Despite the chaos, she noticed something. The drones moved in coordinated waves, responding to commands faster than any normal network could transmit. Captain, I think I found something, she said excitedly. The Ashari use faster-than-light communication to coordinate their hive mind. All those millions of drones are controlled by a few command ships using quantum entanglement. Daehyun understood immediately. If we can disrupt their communication, the swarm loses coordination. Better than that, Somin said, pulling up data on her screen. Dr. Minho's team studied Ashari technology years ago. I think we can inject a virus into their network. It won't destroy them, but it will cause cascade failures in their coordination. She sent the proposal to Earth. Dr. Minho received it and immediately understood the brilliance. A virus that spread through quantum-entangled networks would propagate instantly across all connected drones. He and his team worked for 3 hours straight, designing the virus. It was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to shut down the Ashari network, it would introduce tiny delays in their coordination. Drones would receive commands slightly out of sync, causing them to collide with each other and miss targets. We need to inject this directly into an Ashari command ship, Minho sent back. It requires physical access to their systems. Major Kyung-ho volunteered immediately. My team can do it. Get us close enough. The plan was insane. A small team would have to board an Ashari command ship in the middle of a battle, penetrate their defenses, and upload the virus into their network core. The chances of survival were nearly zero. Do it, Daehyun ordered. Kyung-ho selected his best soldiers, 20 men and women who knew they probably wouldn't come back. They boarded a stealth shuttle and launched into the swarm. The shuttle weaved through millions of Ashari drones relying on its advanced camouflage systems. One hit would destroy them. Kyung-ho watched the command ship grow larger on his screen, his heart pounding. They docked with the enemy vessel using magnetic clamps. Kyung-ho's team cut through the hull with plasma torches and entered the ship. Inside, they faced automated defenses and Ashari warrior drones designed for ship security. The team fought their way through corridors, losing soldiers at every turn. By the time they reached the network core, only 8 remained. Kyung-ho planted the data spike containing the virus into the core's central access port. "Uploading now," he said into his communicator. 30 seconds to completion. Ashari security forces converged on their position. His team formed a circle around him, firing at anything that moved. 15 seconds. More of his soldiers fell. Now only 4 remained. 5 seconds. Kyung-ho's weapon ran out of ammunition. He drew his combat knife. Upload complete. The virus spread through the Ashari network at the speed of light. Every drone connected to the hive mind received the corrupted data simultaneously. Across 12 colony worlds, millions of Ashari fighters suddenly lost coordination. Drones that had been moving in perfect formation started colliding with each other. Attack patterns dissolved into chaos. Ships that should have dodged human fire flew straight into weapons fire instead. Captain Daehyun watched his tactical display as the Ashari offensive collapsed. "All ships, press the attack. Don't give them time to recover." The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Without coordination, the Ashari swarm was just a mob. Individual drones couldn't match human tactics and training. Within hours, the Ashari retreated from all 12 colonies. They had lost millions of drones and gained nothing, but victory came at a terrible cost. Major Kyung-ho and his team were killed by Ashari security forces moments after uploading the virus. They had completed their mission but didn't survive to see its success. Captain Daehyun stood on his bridge, looking at casualty reports. 48 human ships destroyed, thousands of soldiers dead. Kyung-ho, his friend and comrade, gone forever. He made a decision. Plot a course for the Ashari homeworld. We're taking this war to them. Admiral Heejin tried to talk him out of it. "Daehyun, you've done enough. Come back to Earth. Let's negotiate from a position of strength." "No," Daehyun replied firmly. "The Ashari targeted our civilians. They tried to force us to choose between saving our people and destroying the galaxy. They need to understand that actions have consequences." His flagship, damaged and scarred from battle, led what remained of his fleet toward Ashari space. The journey would take 2 days, but the Ashari weren't finished either. Despite the virus disrupting their coordination, the hive mind began adapting. They developed new communication protocols. They isolated infected drones and rebuilt their network, and they prepared for humanity's inevitable counterattack. The war was escalating beyond anyone's control. Both sides had been hurt. Both sides wanted revenge. And Admiral Hyejin knew that if someone didn't end this soon, she would have no choice but to use the silence protocol again. That decision came sooner than she expected. Captain Daehyun's fleet arrived at the edge of Ashari space, battered but determined. The Indomitable's hull was scorched and damaged from the battle at New Jeju. Every ship in his fleet bore similar scars. The Ashari were waiting for them. Their home system was defended by billions of drones, all with improved coordination protocols that resisted the virus. The hive mind had learned from its defeat and adapted quickly. Daehyun knew his 300 ships couldn't win this fight. But he didn't need to win. He just needed to buy time. "All ships, defensive formation," he ordered. "Our job is to survive as long as possible. Every minute we hold here is a minute for Earth to finish evacuating colonies." Lieutenant Sumin looked at her captain with tears in her eyes. She knew what he was really saying. This was a suicide mission. They were going to die here so that others could live. The Ashari attacked in waves. Billions of drones crashed against the human fleet like an ocean against a cliff. Human ships fought with desperate courage, their weapons firing without pause. On Earth, Admiral Hyejin watched the battle through long-range sensors. She saw Daehyun's fleet slowly being overwhelmed. Ship after ship went dark as the Ashari swarm consumed them. She made the hardest decision of her life. Activate the silence protocol, she said quietly. Deploy it across all sectors where Ashari forces are engaged. End this war now. Dr. Minho stared at her in shock. Admiral, Captain Daehyun's fleet is still in the target zone. If we activate the protocol now, they'll be trapped too. I know, Hyejin said, her voice breaking slightly. But if we don't do this, the Ashari will keep attacking. They'll keep killing humans, and they'll force us to destroy even more of the galaxy. This ends now. She opened a direct channel to the Indomitable. Captain Daehyun, we're activating the silence protocol in your sector. You have 5 minutes to evacuate. Daehyun understood immediately. 5 minutes wasn't enough time to escape the collapse zone. His fleet was dead either way, but now their deaths would serve a purpose. Acknowledged, Admiral, he said calmly. It's been an honor serving with you. He turned to his crew. Evacuation shuttles are too slow. Anyone who wants to try to escape can take them, but I'm staying with my ship. Lieutenant Soman, that means you. Soman shook her head. No, sir. I'm staying too. If this is the end, I'd rather face it here with you. Across the fleet, most crews made the same choice. They stayed at their posts, continuing to fight the Ashari even as the countdown ticked away. Dr. Minho activated the silence protocol devices. This time the affected area was massive. 12 sectors of space, each containing Ashari military forces, all targeted simultaneously. The luminal network collapsed across 20% of the galaxy. Billions of Ashari drones suddenly lost their hive mind connection. Without the coordinating intelligence, they simply stopped functioning. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination drifted aimlessly. The Ashari collective, spread across thousands of worlds, found itself unable to communicate faster than light. Their hive mind, which had existed as a single consciousness for millions of years, shattered into isolated fragments. Captain Daehyun felt the moment the network collapsed. His ship's sensors showed Ashari drones going dark by the millions. The attack stopped as suddenly as it had begun. He looked around his bridge. His crew was still alive. Against all odds, they had survived, but they were trapped. The Indomitable and every other human ship in the sector had no way to return home faster than light. The journey back to Earth at sublight speed would take thousands of years. Soman began to cry quietly at her station. Daehyun put a hand on her shoulder. We're alive, he said gently. That's something. And maybe someday someone will figure out how to restore the luminal network. Until then, we keep going. But everyone knew the truth. There was no way to restore the network. Dr. Minho had designed the weapon to be permanent. They would live out their lives aboard their ships. And their children would too, and their children's children, for generation after generation. The galaxy reeled from the second deployment of the silence protocol. 1/5 of all civilized space now had no access to faster-than-light travel. Trillions of beings were cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Trade routes that had existed for thousands of years simply stopped. Empires that controlled multiple systems found their territories suddenly impossible to govern. The carefully maintained galactic order collapsed in a matter of days. The Galactic Council tried to hold emergency sessions, but many member species couldn't even attend anymore. Their home systems were in the dark zones, unreachable. Ambassador Jiwon addressed what remained of the council. You forced this. You voted to enslave humanity. You allied with those who wanted to exterminate us. We responded with the only weapons that guaranteed our survival. The galaxy went silent because you would not let us live in peace. She transmitted a final message to every corner of the galaxy, to every species that could still receive it. This is Ambassador Jiwon of Earth, representing humanity and the Terran Coalition. Our war is over. We sought only to live in peace. You denied us that. We responded with force that shattered the galactic order. Her voice was steady and cold. Let this silence be your teacher. Let it remind you of the cost of cruelty, the price of arrogance, and the danger of underestimating those you consider weak. Humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy. We seek only to be left alone. Our borders are clearly marked. Approach in peace or do not approach at all. She paused, letting her words sink in. The galaxy went silent because you forced our hand. If you ever threaten us again, we will ensure that silence becomes eternal. This is not a threat. This is a promise. 5 years passed. The galaxy adapted to its new reality. The dark zones remained dark, cut off from the rest of civilization. Species learned to live with the consequences of the war they had started. Humanity established the Terran Coalition, an alliance of species that had fought alongside Earth or declared friendship during the war. These allies received human technology and protection. The rest of the galaxy received nothing. Admiral Hyejin retired and returned to Earth. She was hailed as a hero by some and condemned as a monster by others. She spent her remaining years in a small house by the ocean, watching the waves. A young officer visited her once, asking if the cost had been worth it. Hyejin looked out at the sea for a long moment before answering. "We were going to be slaves. Our children would have lived in chains. Our species would have been erased. Yes, we broke the galaxy, but the galaxy tried to break us first." She turned to look at the officer. "I sleep well at night knowing that humanity is free." Far away in the dark zones of space, Captain Daehyun grew old aboard the Indomitable. He had married Somin and they had children. Those children grew up never knowing Earth, living their entire lives in the ship's corridors. Sometimes Daehyun would gather his grandchildren and tell them stories of Earth, of blue skies and green grass, of oceans that stretched to the horizon, of a world where humans were free. "Will we ever see it?" his youngest granddaughter asked. Daehyun smiled sadly. "No, but your great-great-great-grandchildren might. And when they do, they'll know that we paid the price for their freedom." 100 years after the war ended, new civilizations began to rise in the galaxy. They grew up knowing the stories of Earth, the species that had torn the fabric of space itself when threatened. Children of 1,000 alien species were told bedtime stories about the silent ones, the humans who had been quiet and peaceful until pushed too far, the species that had brought the entire galaxy to its knees, and in every story the lesson was the same. There was a region of space where a blue planet circled a yellow star. That region was forbidden, sacred, untouchable. Because Earth's revenge had been so brutal, the galaxy had gone silent, and in that silence humanity had finally found the peace it had always sought.